In the year 332 BC, the inhabitants of Ephesus, in the region of Anatolia, began a monumental project to rebuild their sacred sanctuary. This site, located in what is now modern-day Turkey, was dedicated to their patron goddess Artemis, and they intended to create a structure that would eclipse all others in the Greek world. For centuries, a temple had existed on this specific plot of land, but this new iteration was so impressive that it earned a permanent place among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Ancient travelers often debated why this specific temple was included over all others, citing its unique blend of architectural innovation and spiritual significance. To truly understand why this place was considered so exceptional, we must look into the layers of history that preceded its construction and the goddess who inhabited its halls. Artemis, known to the Romans as Diana, was a deity of immense power and complexity within the ancient pantheon. She was primarily worshipped as the goddess of the wilderness, the hunt, and the untamed natural world, reigning over both flora and fauna. In addition to her role as a huntress, she was also a protector of children, and the goddess charged with overseeing the transition of childbirth. As a virgin goddess, Artemis was seen as an example of chastity and moral virtue, setting her apart from the often chaotic passions of other Olympian figures. In Greek mythology, she was the daughter of Zeus and the goddess Leto, born as a twin alongside her brother Apollo. Her popularity stemmed from her closeness to the daily anxieties of people, specifically women who looked to her for protection during life's most vulnerable moments. However, the Artemis worshipped at Ephesus was a goddess whose identity was shaped by deep Anatolian roots, long before Greek influence arrived. Thousands of years before Greek colonists reached these shores, a local female deity was venerated by the native populations of the region. When the Greeks eventually established themselves in the first millennium BC, they did not replace this deity, but rather absorbed her into their own traditions. This cultural fusion resulted in the Lady of Ephesus, a version of Artemis, who retained many of her ancient, non-Greek characteristics. To visualize this unique figure, we must imagine her statues, which were carved in a style more reminiscent of Egyptian or Mesopotamian art than the classical Greek aesthetic. Her body was often depicted as a rigid, symmetrical pillar, with her lower half encased in a sheath of ornate decorations. Most famously, the upper torso of her statues was covered in dozens of oval-shaped objects, which historical observers often interpreted as multiple breasts. These were thought to symbolize her role as a provider of fertility and abundance to the city and its surrounding lands. Modern scholars, however, suggest that these might not have been breasts at all, but rather ornaments such as eggs or jewelry made of amber. These items would have been hung as votive offerings on older wooden statues before becoming a permanent part of the goddess's traditional iconography. Despite these different visual representations, the Lady of Ephesus remained a source of immense prosperity and protection for the city's inhabitants. This practice of religious syncretism, where foreign gods were identified with local ones, was a hallmark of Greek expansion across the Mediterranean. By associating the Anatolian goddess with Artemis, the Greeks were able to integrate themselves into the local spiritual landscape without causing cultural friction. Similar associations occurred with the Egyptian Isis or the Mesopotamian Ishtar, who were also linked to Artemis depending on the regional context. The city of Ephesus itself, though now a collection of ruins in modern Turkey, was once one of the most vibrant urban centers of antiquity. Because of its strategic location near the Aegean coast, Ephesus became a hub for trade, politics, and the meeting of diverse civilizations. This connectivity allowed the city to flourish, funding the construction of massive public works like a theater capable of seating 20,000 spectators. Yet, the heart of the city's identity always returned to the sanctuary of Artemis, which had been a site of worship since at least the 8th century BC. This earliest Greek temple at the site was significant for being one of the first to be entirely surrounded by a colonnade, a style known as peripteral. These ancient precursors celebrated their rituals in open spaces or within palace halls rather than in dedicated temple buildings. As the Greek civilization matured between the 9th and 6th centuries BC, these colonnaded structures became the standard for divine housing. The temple at Ephesus was likely the first of its kind to be built outside of the Greek mainland, marking a major milestone in architectural history. While the exterior of these temples followed a similar pattern, the interior details and decorative flourishes varied wildly from one city to another. At Ephesus, the temple was part of a competitive race among Greek cities to see who could build the most magnificent and imposing structure. We must also reconsider our modern image of these buildings as being made of stark, pristine white marble. In reality, the ancient Greeks favored a vibrant palette, painting their temples in bright reds, deep blues, and shimmering golds. The funding for such massive projects came from a variety of sources, including city administrations, religious donations, and wealthy private citizens. As the centuries passed and Rome rose to power, the era of the classic Greek temple began to wind down. Roman architects adopted many of these Greek forms, but they introduced their own proportions and decorative styles that eventually replaced the older models. The first archaic temple at Ephesus was even surrounded by legends claiming it had been founded by the Amazons, the mythical warrior women. These fierce hunters were often associated with Artemis and were credited in myths with the founding of several major Anatolian cities. However, the historical reality was more grounded in tragedy, as the first temple was eventually destroyed or severely damaged by a catastrophic flood. The site remained in a state of disrepair until the 6th century BC, when the legendary King Croesus of Lydia stepped in to fund a new version. Croesus was renowned for his unimaginable wealth, and he used his resources to ensure the second temple was built entirely of marble. This was a pioneering achievement, as it was likely the first Greek temple of its size to utilize marble for its primary structure. During its long construction, the region was annexed by the Persian Empire under the Achaemenid dynasty. The Persians were generally tolerant of local customs, allowing the Ephesians to continue their worship and their building projects without interference. For 2 centuries, the Second Temple stood as a symbol of the city's cosmopolitan nature, blending Greek, Anatolian, and Persian influences. This period of peace ended abruptly in 356 BC, when the magnificent marble structure was gutted by a massive fire. A man named Herostratus confessed to the crime, claiming he set the blaze solely because he wanted his name to be remembered throughout history. While a marble building might seem fireproof, the entire internal frame and the roof structure were made of timber, which provided ample fuel for the flames. Some modern historians suspect a deeper conspiracy, suggesting that the temple's foundations were actually sinking into the marshy ground. The priests may have realized the building was doomed to collapse and decided to destroy it preemptively to avoid the shame of a structural failure. By blaming an arsonist, they could secure the public support and funding needed for a complete and total reconstruction. Whether it was an act of madness or a calculated plot, the fire left Ephesus without a sanctuary for its patron goddess for 30 years. During this interim, The rise of Alexander the Great transformed the political landscape of the entire known world. A popular legend later claimed that Alexander was born on the very same night the temple burned, as Artemis was too busy assisting his birth to save her shrine. Alexander eventually drove the Persians out of Anatolia, and in 333 BC, the year of his death, work finally began on the third temple. This final version was the one that truly captured the world's imagination and became the celebrated wonder of the ancient world. To walk through the temple was to move through a series of increasingly sacred spaces, beginning with the double line of exterior columns. After passing through the portico, a visitor would enter the pronaos, the vestibule that served as the formal entrance to the inner temple. To the right of the entrance, a hidden staircase led up to the roof, while the left side housed a heavily guarded treasury. This room contained the city's most precious artifacts, along with vast reserves of coins and precious metals dedicated to the goddess. Beyond the vestibule lay the naos, or cellar, which was the literal heart of the entire sanctuary. Here, the larger-than-life statue of Artemis stood amidst walls decorated with intricate reliefs and vivid paintings. Unlike modern places of worship, the interior of a Greek temple was not designed to accommodate large congregations. Most religious ceremonies and animal sacrifices took place outside, on the sacred grounds surrounding the temple. This separation between the priestly interior and the public exterior was a standard feature of many ancient Mediterranean religions. It was only with the rise of Christianity that large public-facing religious buildings, like the Roman Basilica, became the norm. The term cellar actually shares its roots with the word for a monk's private room or even a biological cell, emphasizing its nature as a small, enclosed chamber. Inside the naos, a table or altar sat before the cult image to receive votive offerings from the faithful. These gifts could range from simple household items to expensive weapons captured from defeated enemies. Behind the main chamber lay the opisthodomos, a back room that mirrored the entrance vestibule to maintain the building's perfect symmetry. While its exact function in Ephesus is debated, it likely served as additional storage for the temple's extensive wealth. Eventually, the temple exited through a final gate known as the posticum, completing the journey through the massive structure. For 6 centuries, this third temple stood as a pillar of ancient civilization, but the tide began to turn in the 3rd century AD. The Roman Empire faced internal instability and external threats, including raids by the Goths from the north. The temple was looted and damaged during these invasions, marking the beginning of a slow and painful decline. As Christianity spread through the region, the old pagan religions lost their hold on the hearts of the populace. By the 5th century, the city of Ephesus was predominantly Christian, and the name of Artemis was systematically removed from public inscriptions. The temple was eventually ordered to be destroyed, with its stones quarried and hauled away to build churches and other public works. After a millennium of prominence, the religious site that had once been a beacon of the ancient world simply vanished. The city of Ephesus itself struggled for several more centuries before being abandoned entirely in the 15th century as the Byzantine Empire fell. Today, only a few scattered stones and a single reconstructed column mark the spot where the great marble giant once stood. Discover more history by watching the next video. We're eager to share more with you. You can't go wrong. All our videos are deeply detailed, dull while fascinating, and distinctly sleep-inducing.